Good evening, everyone. We'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order here. Approval of the agenda or additions to the agenda. We do have a recommendation of the agenda be approved as presented, but I would like to make one exception that we move 7.2.1, the Keppel Sarawak Elementary School, ahead of Martin Sazek with the Derby Kilsyth Community Center, 7.1. So I'd just like to switch the order on those two. If we can get a mover and a seconder on that. Councillor Schwolleis, Councillor Winters, and I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, the culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and the Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen, the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on the land and live in peace and friendship with those diverse peoples. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Anybody with declaration tonight? If needed moving forward, just let us know when we can approve. Announcement. Does any member wish to make an announcement? Councillor Day.
Breaking news, just released media release on May 18th, which clearly is breaking news. There's a celebration for the environment with local artists and community groups who are taking action for the Act for Climate Cabaret on June 5th at 7 p.m. This is of note because this is the group that we gave $500 to support them on the Earth Day event. And this is the culmination of their videoed performances on Earth Day, which will now be a climate cabaret on the 5th. So look for media releases and check our emails for further details.
Thank you for that. That's great news. Anything else? Not seeing anything. Okay, public hearings. We have none. All right, delegations, public question period, 7.1. Any person who wishes to appear before committee of the whole regarding an item on the agenda shall make written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. Excuse me. To register at www.georgianvlogs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 603. Moving into our next piece, which is 7.2, the Keppel Sarawak Elementary School Eco Team. Welcome, Keppel Sarawak Elementary School. And you have 50 minutes to speak. And when I do get you to speak, could I please have you give us your name? Mm.
Bryson and I'm grade 5 too. My name is Max, I'm grade 5. My name is Chelsea and I'm grade 6 and I'm part of the Campbell Cleanup crew. My name is Grace and I'm grade 6 and I'm part of the Campbell Cleanup crew, which is company. We are a group of 10 students who attended the Climate Action Conference, working with teachers and community members to reduce the impact on the earth. Today, the 6 of us are here to represent the Keppel Sarawak ecosystem.
On the desk, something like the COVID.
but it'll have to be on this.
And a Kemble cleanup to clean up the garbage around the community. We have started the composting program, and this is what we have done so far. So far for the composting program, we have done some testing to see how much compost an average classroom makes a day. No, just. When we did the testing to see how much an average classroom makes, we did a kindergarten class and a grade 5 class. We found out that the grade 5 class produced around 4 kilograms of compost and the kindergarten class didn't produce much. However, it is a kindergarten class and it may take them a while to figure out what goes in and what doesn't. If we averaged both amounts, we got around 2 kilograms for each class. For our school's composting program, we did an estimation jar with an ice cream sundae party for your class if you won. By the way, I won. Oh, that's next slide. We raised $600. All this money is going towards buying composting bins for us for the classrooms. We are hoping to get some help from you. We are asking for 3 things. 1 green cone composter. These are the below ground composters. 2 earth machine composters. These are traditional composters that take lots of waste. And also 2 countertop units so we can participate in the township's pilot program. Thank you for allowing us to speak to you today, and we hope you will be able to help us out. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for the presentation. It was very good. You done a great job there. I know as council, we had the discussion. Our community services, Niall, has been working with us on this project too. I think we take this as information today and then we take it from there. But again, thanks so much for coming today and doing this, Councillor Day.
I talked to the students already. Some of you know that I have 2 jobs, and one of them is here and the other one is at Owen Sound District Secondary School. So I certainly hope to see you later. And we could use your help getting composting going at OSDSS as well. We've got a little bit, but as you've probably figured out, community makes a big difference in how fast action can happen. So you're playing a great role within your community to make active change, and I really applaud you for that. I wonder if we could make a decision this evening, if that would be possible. We do have the climate action budget that we have some flexibility with. We gave that $500 earlier the same evening for theater, and I wonder if we could employ that here this evening as well.
Mayor Carlton.
Thank you. And I would second what Councillor Day has said. I think it's fantastic that you're here doing this presentation, and I would be quite happy to make the motion. Since I'm not chairing tonight, I can make a motion, and I would make the motion that we support you in everything that you've asked for there. I think that's a great concept, and good on all of you for working on it. Thank you.
Or any other comments? Anybody? Everybody's good? Councillor Day.
I'm not sure we can create sidewalks tonight, but I bet we could. But I bet we could fund the composters, just to be super clear.
Yep. I'm looking at our clerk here for recommendation.
For you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, so that the Keppel Sarawak Elementary School Eco Team be provided a green cone, 2 earth machines, and 2 countertop composters, and that it be funded from the climate action budget.
Perfect. I need a mover and a seconder. Counselor Schuldice, Counselor Winters. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All right, that is carried. All right, thanks so much for coming in. Oh.
Oh.
I kind of wondered if that was Alicia's.
Yeah, yeah.
For those watching at home, we'll be right with you. We're just clearing out some people out of the council chambers.
If ours get too far under, they don't pick up on it. Yeah.
All right, I think we're almost ready to move on here with the next part of our agenda. Martin Sazik on the Derby Kilsyth Community Center has a proposal. And if Martin would like to step up to the microphone here and introduce himself and let us know what he's got for us.
I just like to apologize. We just got in right from the field, so we're just a little frazzled and all that. So, just like to thank council on behalf of Brampton North Soccer and our venture project, Ontario Sports Development, for hearing our proposal for the Kilsyth Arena. I speak on behalf as well with Lowland Sound Soccer Club is here today too, and we actually have a petition of various clubs, including lacrosse and field hockey, that support the refit of the Kilsyth Arena. I'd just like to say that Niles did a fantastic job of presenting to council in his report the criteria and the background information. I don't think I could add too much to it. It's very detailed. He's done a really good job. And so I'm basically here just to answer any questions that you have. The only thing I would like to do is just reiterate the proposal in general is as far as we're concerned, and the clubs as well, and I think Niall as well, that it's a win-win-win for the community in that the cost of developing an indoor turf facility, especially with the inflated cost of construction, has become, well, it used to be impossible. And I think we're beyond that now with the cost of the materials, whether it's a dome or a clear span structure, the purchase of the land, the management, fitting of it with the equipment and the turf, it's into millions of dollars. So more and more communities are looking at older hockey arenas that are becoming obsolete but are still in good condition, and refitting it with an artificial turf is a good way to save the township the cost of a new build, and at the same time it provides the local clubs with an opportunity to move from the gymnasiums into an indoor turf facility, which we like to say in the business is kind of going from a paddle boat to a cruise ship. It really is quite the difference if you're playing sports. So, and that brings me to the last point for the children, the experience for them in playing in an indoor turfed arena, regardless of what sport they're doing, is a great experience, and I think it will encourage enrollment and higher registrations as well. And just a note on that, for the rep teams that do a lot of traveling, soccer especially, they often travel 2 hours within their group. Having a home field as well would be an advantage to them. And so I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory. I think it's a win-win-win. We've looked at the building. We've talked with with Niall, the representative, extensively about the project. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Mark or from the local clubs would like to maybe say a word too. I don't know if they're on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Martin, for that. Any questions from council? It was a very, there's a lot of information in that proposal and a lot for us to take in, so.
And sorry, I'm just flustered because I just ran in, so
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
catch my breath.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I should have mentioned that as the founding members of Brampton North Soccer, which is our parent company, both Diane and I have been involved in running indoor and outdoor soccer for the past 22 years. We currently register over 2,000 kids in Brampton, both indoor and out, and we're responsible for managing the turf, managing the indoor facility, and removing and installing the turf annually every year, which we wouldn't do here. So we have a lot of experience in managing the facility, the patrons that attend, and the equipment and the turf in it as well. So it's not something we're new to. So we bring a lot of experience to the table.
All right, thank, Mayor Carlton.
I think because this is on our agenda later, that's when we would bring it up for any discussion, unless there was a specific question that someone wanted to have answered at this point.
Councillor Day.
Clarify, this is our time to ask questions of Martin. Okay, so I do have two questions, if I may proceed. Thank you. I, as I already said, work in a high school, so I have heard so much chatter around this one. It is very well received by many parents who do a lot of driving and teachers who are also coaches. And there's been a lot of hope that somewhere in Owen Sound there will be an AstroTurf facility sometime soon. I had some other comments that I was wondering if you could provide some perspective on about concerns around potential links to cancer and AstroTurf. I understand that there's different materials that can be used that might reduce the risk. As the person who would be providing the AstroTurf, I was curious if you could provide more detail.
Right, and I'm aware of your concerns. There has been conclusive studies about the cancer-causing agents in the granulated tires that are used in non-domestic turf, and I think there are genuine concerns with that. I have double-checked with our supplier, and all of the materials used in the turf that would go into a kill site are domestic plastics, the same as they would use in households every day, and they're non-toxic. So I could, pending a contract, provide more detailed information regarding that, but they assured me that all the materials are of a plastic nature, not a regranulated tire that contains some of the carcinogens that you're talking about. So I can look further into that before we move further, but they have assured me that that's the situation, and also that there's 1,500 to 2,000 refits in Ontario per year or returfing. High schools, Catholic schools are doing a lot, and so their concerns about this too have been addressed, and they feel satisfied that the products that are going into the schools are safe.
Thank you. My other question is about the lifespan of the product. In the document, it says 15 to 20 years, which when we're talking about a 10-year lease and then either 5 or 10 years after which it will be a viable AstroTurf for the municipality to use. I was wondering if there is a way of providing a closer estimate, if it would be more likely 5 years or the full 10-year lifespan that we get after the
I've
initial
spoken with the company. I think this product should last 20 years. It'll probably outlive me. So, and at least for the 10-year term, and then 10 years beyond that. And we've discussed whether or not after 10 years, whether we would continue managing the facility for the township or we would donate it to the township. But the turf is generally said 20, but I think it would even last longer than that. The way that the fibers and the infill system work now, there's not a lot of wear on the fibers. The one that we have in Brampton, we've had for almost 20 years, and it doesn't have the infill granules in it. It's just more like a carpet. And we're still using that over near 20 years. And these products are designed to last longer.
Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Would you have an approximate idea how many hours a week you you're hoping to rent out during the week?
We're expecting a minimum of 40, but we can accommodate 60 hours. So 30 on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays. Diane can speak more to that, but about 60 hours. This is my wife, Diane.
Usually what we're being, our 40 hours is based on 6 to 10 during the week and then 10 hours both on the Saturday and Sunday. However, we can stretch that out quite a bit depending on late nights at the facility that we do now. We go to 1 a.m. So it depends on who wants to. So there is a lot of room for accommodation, and we've only taken up 10 hours each on a Saturday, Sunday, which in most of the time you can probably do 15 hours. So we can go up to 60 hours easy.
Do you have a kind of a standard rental per hour number that you use across the board, or is there?
Yeah, here we'd be much cheaper than what in the cities and stuff and down in Brampton. I mean, they're looking at they're renting at about between $250 and $275 an hour. We're looking to keep that under. We're trying to keep it under $175 an hour so that it's more feasible and affordable to the community and to the clubs.
Councillor Day.
If I might, this relates to something you just asked. Would the 60 hours just be in the fall, winter, and spring, or would you also see that summer would
No,
be
we'll
a time?
go year round.
Okay.
We will keep it open year round. I would expect that in the summer months, the hours would probably drop down depending on the usage, who actually wants to use it in the summer, but we would always keep it open for summer use.
Any further questions?
Just to add to what Diane's saying, I think that summer usage obviously would be comparatively less than in the fall and the winter. However, a lot of teams, when they're holding events, are worried about weather conditions, and they would book the arenas for banquets or training purposes or out of town events or tournaments and that kind of thing to ensure that the field conditions are good rather than risking. So there is potential for rental income during this. And also a lot of community groups approach us in Brampton for using the arena for birthday parties and other community activities, banquets, as I said, where they would use the banquet hall upstairs for the presentation and food, and then they will go on the field and they play soccer or they play different sports. So it has a multi-purpose usage, but generally in the summer it's obviously a lot quieter.
Further questions there too. So in the summertime there, I know like this Saturday night coming up in Kilsyth, there's a Buck and Doe. Is there opportunity for that to be taken out for the summer? Is it how big a job is it to take it out or put it in?
We would encourage them to just use the turf. They can use it for their parties. They can run on it or set up tables and that kind of thing. Taking it out with the infill is difficult.
This is a big challenge. Okay.
It's costly, and then you lose a lot of the granulars, and if it can be left permanently, it's definitely better. But for Buck and Does and that kind of thing, again, we have the banquet community hall upstairs, and it's a good size, and then you have the whole arena to do other kinds of activities.
Right. Yeah. I know there's 400 going to this Buck and Doe on the weekend, so I don't think they'd all fit upstairs.
Right.
But yeah, but anyway, no, that was my question, because there are a few Buck and Does are starting again, and that is part of, small community kind of thing. So I appreciate you answering the question.
I play lead guitar and rock band.
No.
So we rented facilities before, and I've just set up the stage on the turf and everything. And with that's one advantage of the infill system. If you're just using the carpet without the granules, you worry about staining. Where the granulars, the infill absorbs. Someone spills liquid or sulfur, so we don't have to worry about it as much. So it has that advantage as well.
Good. All right. Thank you, Councillor Day.
I'm now very curious about how you clean AstroTurf between uses.
You don't actually. Sorry. Well, there's a raking system to spread the turf, spread the granules if they've accumulated in one area. But as far as cleaning the surface, there usually isn't a need for that because we don't allow drinks or food on the playing area. So generally, and you can hose it down and the water will evaporate inside it if there is a concern about if somebody threw up or something. We do clean that, vacuum it, and then wash that whole area, disinfect it.
Someone mentioned that for Buck and Doe's, if people used plastic instead of glass, then it would be fine to consume beverages and food on the AstroTurf. This is coming from the community, not from yourself. So I don't know. That would tie in with what Deputy Mayor Pringle is talking about.
Diane would, but if we agree to have people drinking on field surface because she wants to avoid becoming slippery or that. So I realize that Buck and Doe, but if they wanted to have drinks, we would encourage to have it off the play area, which I think is.
You can also look for a cover system for those kind of things. So they have been in the past, we've been able to
tarp
it or find a cover system for it that we can actually lay on top of it so that it doesn't be that kind of thing. But
Depending on how much interest there is, if we were getting a lot of that hard usage, we could invest in cover.
Right, no, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I think this is the first Buck and Doe in 3 years, right? So because of COVID and all the rest of it, but they are starting to materialize again in the area, and that's something I know is, my kids growing up, but that's something that's going to start to happen again, and I want to make sure we can still have those functions if need be, or come up with a solution. So,
sippy cups.
What's that?
Sippy cups.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments and your time here today. Anybody else? Any further questions? All right, thanks, Martin. Appreciate your time. All right, moving on to correspondence. Ontario Home Builders Association Housing Summit. Anybody have any questions or comments? Received for information. Let's see, anything there? Thank you. All right, not seeing anything there. We accept that for information, Cardi. That's what that was for. Perfect, thank you. Moving on to staff reports, the Treasury Department, 9.1.1 Asset Management Plan. Recommendation reads that the council approve waiving bylaw 2019-047 being a bylaw for the procurement of goods and services to allow for external advice on a temporary retainer basis up to a maximum of $50,000 related specifically to creation of an updated asset management plan to be provided by PSD Citywide Incorporated, and that council endorse the next steps required for creation of an updated asset management plan to meet the requirements of the set out in ORegs 588/17 asset management planning for the municipality infrastructure, and that council directs staff to bring forward an updated asset management plan for final approval by council. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Troles, Mayor Carlton, and discussion. I will look to Samantha on this. Or Niall. Samantha, okay.
No, I was just going to say I don't have much to add to the report. An asset management plan is something that we are required to have as a municipality. Unfortunately, we're not in compliance at this time with the Ontario Regulation 588/17. So this report is requesting assistance in ensuring that we are we are back on side with that regulation.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Carlton.
Just a question for you, Samantha. What happens when we're in non-compliance on issues like that? Does it affect future funding, or is there a penalty for it, or just curious about what happened?
So through your chair, typically it can very much affect us, especially with grants. Right now, it has not luckily affected us. The question has only been, do you have an asset management plan? Which we do. If the question is to change, do you have a compliant asset management plan? That is where we would no longer be successful.
Sir Day.
I would appreciate some background information about how we became uncompliant, just so I can learn more about the scenario and be better prepared in the future. So through your chair, it's unfortunately due to turnover of staff. We did not meet the deadline. I also have another question in part from Councillor Coburn, which you might be able to predict already, wondering if it is something we need to do externally, or if we have someone in-house that could do it, that would prevent that additional cost.
So again, through your chair, Staff will be preparing most of it. We do need that external assistance at this time. Unfortunately, we are short-staffed right now. It is just a retainer, so it is based on how much we actually use it, based on how much we will pay. This is just a very maximum amount, but as I said, staff will be working to complete as much of the work as possible. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, on to 9.1.2, FIN 2023-08 asset maintenance software. Recommendation reads that council approve waiving bylaw 2019-047 being a bylaw for procurement and goods and service to allow for single sourcing of implementation of a maintenance management software, and that council approve expenditures of up to 135,000 to PSD citywide for the creation and implementation of the citywide maintenance managed software, and the council approve 15,000 to PSD citywide for the annual support maintenance of the citywide maintenance manager software, and that council direct staff to include the costs associated with the annual support maintenance of the citywide maintenance manager software in future operating budgets. Need a mover and a second. Councillor Day, Councillor Winters. Sam, would you like to speak to this too?
I will do my best. So we have been using it citywide, which is what PSD citywide is funded through for our, mostly from a financial perspective, by implementing the maintenance manager software, which is included in the citywide portfolio. It would allow us to track better everything that we do to every single asset. So if an incident was to occur for any asset, we could then look historically and say, what did we do on what days? And it helps alleviate some insurance liability.
Thank you for that. PSD citywide is one of only of a couple probably in Ontario that do this. Are they the only ones that do this business, or just for?
There are other softwares that do have maintenance management aspects. PSD, we are requesting that the procurement and purchasing policy be waived because we already use them. And this is an additional, and it helps to have that link between our current asset listing and our maintenance to each asset instead of having a completely separate software.
Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, that's what I really wanted to hear, was that we already use it and it's part of our system anyway, so we're not going outside the scope. Councillor Winters.
Thank you. Through you to Sam. Sam, what is your time frame of having this updated asset management plan implemented? The second part of that question is next year during budget, will we see the benefits of this software? Instead of just saying, you know, it's time to replace a truck because we want to replace a truck, will this give us the information behind that of showing equipment repairs and whatnot? Are we going to be able to make more informed decisions?
So through your chair, we are hoping to have the asset management plan presented end of this year, beginning of next year. Unfortunately for 2024, we may not have the maintenance software completely implemented at that time. We are going to be working our quickest too, but it might be the historical aspects that we can't always have implemented. With the maintenance software, we would need to generate and make forms that if an inspection was to occur, it has all the questions. So there will be some legwork there. And again, just with staffing, it is kind of myself and one other that will be doing a lot of this legwork. So we will be working towards that. I can't guarantee for 2024 budgets we'll see that end product, but my goal would be 2025 that we can see some more of that data for sure.
If I could add to the Treasurer's response just there. The question is, yes, Councillor Winters, that's exactly the point of this software. It's to basically take the best efforts of staff and to add to that a database which supports those decision-making exercises for park benches, playgrounds, roads, culverts, ditches, bridges, and vehicles. And so through the implementation of this software, the intention is that we end up with a database which is not just predicting 1 year ahead, but this will be helping to inform both longer term operational plans and longer term capital asset renewal plans, so that we're making smart decisions based on data and relying on the expertise of staff to weigh in on that. But we now have data that can help support that decision making process.
Councilor Winters.
Thank you. That's the answer I was hoping you had, right? That's where I was hoping we were headed with this. And I just thought that gave everybody the opportunity to understand why we're doing what we're doing. Thank you.
Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just kind of clarification in my mind then. When you enter the information in, so is it an extra step in entering that data? Or if you're putting in an invoice to pay for something on a truck, does that automatically tag it over onto this? Or just how does that system work?
Through you, our accounting software at this time would not speak to the program, but what it does do is our public works and our facility staff, instead of having pieces of paper lying around with the documentation of the work that they had done to an asset, they can now implement that and put that right in Citywide and link it directly to the asset. So we would have everything within that database, opposed to having paper saved anywhere and then trying to find the information.
And if I may, and apologies for cutting in on this one. This is I love this stuff. This stuff actually gets me quite nerdy and excited. And I've just admitted that on YouTube, but never mind. Moving on from that. So yeah, the example I'd like to use here is a park bench. Everybody knows what a park bench is. We know it costs us $5,000 to buy a park bench. We know it costs us probably $5,000 to pour a reasonable concrete pad for that bench on. So the cost of that bench is $10,000, but it isn't. Because over the estimated lifespan of that bench, which once you bought it may last 15 to 20 years, over that estimated lifespan, staff will need to go in, they may need to replace a board on that bench. And so there is a work order that gets associated to that bench that helps contribute towards its lifetime inspection. And perhaps we need to do a seasonal inspection every spring just to make sure that that timber hasn't rotted away and become dangerous over the winter. And again, there is a staff cost associated to it. So that bench's lifespan costs over that 20-year period aren't just the sum of the bench and the pad that it's poured on. The lifetime cost of that bench are all the operational functions that go into that bench. And that's the point at which, touching on Councillor Winter's point, that's how we make those data-informed decisions as to whether spending an extra $250 in this bench on year 18 actually makes sense. Is that going to extend the lifespan of that bench to a sufficient enough extent that it's worth investing that time and resource into that bench, or should we actually be looking at its cost replacement? And through having something like this software, we're able to predict those costs potentially years in advance. Once we get smart, we get that body of data, we'll be able to predict those changes years in advance, as well as being able to predict the operational impacts of onboarding new things. So if we decide to go out and buy 10 new park benches this year, we might be able to afford the capital investment of that. But have we got the resourcing in place to manage those 10 new benches in 5 years' time? Or do we now need to look at our operational resourcing model to make sure that we've got the capacity to onboard that new asset today in 5 years' time, and we're working towards that? So the end point, the rosy horizon on the back end of a lot of work setting this up to us to be able to put that data in, is that we have much more reliable information around our assets. And in fact, that's why the province has put the OREG in place, is to try and enable those data informed decisions over the long term investments that municipalities make in their asset infrastructure.
Councillor Day.
I think it sounds like a great idea. I would welcome having that information so we can make, as you said, those database decisions. I think it also takes the entire staff to be as excited about it as you are, to make sure that we get the right data uploaded into the system to use later on.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, to Councillor Day, you're quite right. it does take enthusiasm at a lot of different levels, and it certainly means that the technology we put into people's hands has to be as something which doesn't see as a block to them doing the work they want to do, but is seen as something streamlined that's part of the work. And that's one of the benefits of using this particular vendor. I've worked with a couple of vendors now in Ontario that do similar sorts of products. And one of the things with PSD is I think they're in more than 300 municipalities in Ontario, so they're a very, very widespread system, and a lot of their customer base is in the smaller township type municipal environments. So they've dealt with people. That is the end point of the product that our operators will see in their hand. Is it will be easier than making a phone call on a smart device. So it would take more time to make a phone call on a smart device than it will be to collect and input this information on there. So the intention of this is it becomes easier than the paperwork is, and that's what the win is on the operation side of things.
Mayor Carlton.
Thank you. That just brought another question up for me. So if this is taking the paperwork out of it, is it putting it all into like a digital on an iPad or a tablet type thing? And does it then, as things are being input, does it do a scheduling or allow you to do a scheduling that says this needs to be checked at specific times? So then we don't drop the ball on anything. We make sure everything gets handled as it should. I see nods. That's awesome.
Yes.
Go ahead, Sam.
Through you, yes, we can set up those schedules for every single asset, every single type of inspection or look at or whatever we maybe need to do to an asset over its useful life. We can set those up and it can create work orders based on when those dates are coming due. We can set it up to have parameters that it could be 2 weeks before the due date to have the inspection done. A work order is getting sent out to staff, and it's the reminder that they come in and look at their list for the day, and that's what it's scheduled them to do.
All right, thanks a lot, Sam. Well, now you got me excited now, so good on you for that. Yeah, anything to make life simpler for everybody all the way around and ease of doing their jobs, I'm all for it too. So any other further discussion, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, on to community services. 9.2.1, letter of support for GBTEL CRTC funding application. Recommendation reads that information on the Ashiniming to Sauble Beach Backbone and Owen Sound project being laid by GBTEL across Grey Bruce and in Georgian Bluffs be received. And that the letter of support prepared by staff on behalf of the Township of Georgian Bluffs be received for comment. And that the mayor be authorized to sign the letter on behalf of the Township of Georgian Bluffs, and that staff submit the letter of support of GBTEL and their CRTC, Canadian Radio Television Communications, for that letter. I need a mover and a seconder. Mayor Carlton, Councillor Day, discussion. Actually, would you like to speak to this?
Very few comments through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Yeah, we've been asked for a funding letter. I believe actually the funding application period closes today. So this is when the funding closes. So CRTC will be making a decision over the next few weeks, months on these applications. And this really is about supporting high-speed internet access, improvements to our communities and residents. And so we've been asked to put our word in to try and support this project so that GBTEL, who are just one of the providers we have here, are able to try and advance that improvement to their network in this area.
Thank you. Any questions, Mayor Carlton?
Not a question, a comment. I certainly am happy to see this one going through. I'm kind of sorry that we're a little late getting it in for them, but we're getting that done. The thing I'd really like to comment on, though, is the way the letter is set up for the signature at the bottom, that it's the mayor for and on behalf of the Council of Georgian Bluffs. I like that. It should never just be the mayor. So thank you for putting that in. I like that wording.
I wondered where that was going. but thank you.
Councillor Day.
Just a quick comment in favor of sending the letter. It's great to see a local company taking some action to get high-speed internet in a region that really could benefit from it, as we definitely saw during the pandemic and teaching from home.
Perfect. Any other comments? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, on to infrastructure and buildings, 9.3.1, IFN 2023-05, street scan road. Oh, sorry. I couldn't have. I did. Thanks for the catch there, Carly. Thank you. All right, I'll back up a little bit here to 9.2.2, CSD 2023-06, proposal for the Derby Kilsyth Community Center. Recommendation reads that council consider potential alternative use of the Derby Community Center by Ontario Sports Development, and that direction to staff on whether to continue to explore an agreement for use is given, and that staff is directed to further explore alternative use, that staff be directed to bring a report and formal proposal back to the council for further discussion. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Sholes, Councillor Winters, and Niles, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I might offer a few more words on the last item on this one. So I think it's fair to say that this one's got a fairly long lifespan to it. It was actually a proposal we received during COVID, during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic. And obviously with the various different things that were happening through that period, it wasn't really able to be re-looked at. And we were reapproached at the beginning of this year and have met with Martin, who you met earlier on, at Kilsyth to have a look at the proposal that was in front of us at that time. I think the proposal is relatively easy to understand. The concrete arena floor would essentially remain as is. The intention being to put an artificial turf surface down onto that facility and then operate it as an indoor turf facility. The request of as part of that process would be that heating would be added. I'm sure you've been in the arena building in the middle of winter, and it's a fairly cool environment in the middle of winter. So this would allow and support for that year-round use during the cooler months of that facility. There'd be no requirement to upgrade any of the rest of the facility. It would be just considered as a change to the arena floor. And in discussion with Martin, the one ongoing use that we have a continuous agreement for beyond just a user group would be the Derby Pioneers or Kilsyth Senior Group, which would be allowed and permitted to continue to use the facility as they do currently under the agreement they hold with the township under a new operational model. The proposal by OSD, as it is before us, would see them taking on complete operational control of the building for a period of not less than 10 years. And that would allow for cost recovery of the investment they would need to make into bringing that as the artificial turf floor into the facility. The cost recovery model would be through rentals and bookings of the floor to local sports groups, local community groups and others. And in discussion with the proponent, there is the opportunity to extend the reach of community activities that go on in that space so that they can try to achieve as much programming on that space as possible. Again, with an end point of trying to make this as sustainable and financially as feasible as possible over the long term. So yes, the primary target audience for this is sports user groups, but there are a variety of other user groups that would be welcome and able to use that turf and possibly extend significantly beyond the existing community use that's supported in the facility into new and different areas. The existing use of Kilsyth Community Centre is relatively light. On average, on a year-to-year basis, we see less than 15 hours a week, although that does experience seasonal peaks and troughs. So there are some months, certainly as we get into the very early part of the spring, before we get ice off at Shallow Lake, where we see increased levels of use of that facility. And we do see periods of intense use. And as you indicate, occasionally we get things that are very, very high numbers of local residents that will be making use of that facility for community events, stag and does, and various other activities. But on average, it's about 15 hours of use a week. Looking at the use that we traditionally experience on that facility, we believe that the proponent would be able to welcome almost all of those user groups into the facility and to continue to use their facility. The rates of use would change for those ad hoc user groups, and so they would see an increase in the user rents. Our rents are extraordinarily low. I think we're about $37 an hour at the minute for that facility, so it's a very cheap facility to be able to access, and the rates would increase under this model. But the only use we've found that to date would probably not be able to be supported on that plate, and we do see quite heavy seasonal uses by Derby roller by the roller derby, and they make heavy use of the facility through the late fall months and through the spring months. It's a club that's seen ups and downs in membership, but it's currently on an upward spiral with its membership between here and Mount Forest. So we have an interesting proposal before us. I should note that this is not something which has been contemplated by council to date. It was not something that came through the Recreation and Trails Master Plan, so there's no strategic vision around this one. And I think that we do need to think a little bit about some of the conversations we had in respect to the Kemble Arena, similar sort of nature of facilities, similar level of community use, similar types of community use that occur in that facility. And obviously we did look at the renovation costs associated to that earlier on this year, and that's been deferred back to staff to come back to council later on this year. Without reading between the lines too much, I suspect we need to review the facilities that we have as a township, both in terms of their lasting lifespan that they have available and the community needs that we see within the township today. That work has not been done, and so any decision around the Kilsyth Arena, Derby Arena, would be being made in absence of having that deeper dive into what the township communities may need from facilities. Obviously, there's a strong user group and voices that are very keen to see something like this, and it would definitely support. I think there's some correspondence which didn't make it in time for the agenda package today that you will see at June 7th, and you'll see, I think, from Owen Sound Minor Soccer, as many as 20% of their membership is drawn from the township and is currently having to travel outside of the township almost exclusively for its play. So certainly there is some local interest in this, but there are certainly going to be some local groups which would be put out by this. The other thing I'd factor in briefly in my comments on this one is there would be a commitment to maintain this building for 10 years. This is a building which is approaching 50, which is a good age for a building. Now we have got a building condition assessment done on it, and the building condition assessment that says despite many elements of the building being beyond life cycle, it's actually not in bad nick. The roof, as one of the major construction pieces of it, is in pretty good condition. The washrooms are beyond life cycle, but again functional and working. And so it is an old building. And as with all old things, myself included on that one, we require additional investment as we get older. And so I think it is fair to say that over the next 10 years, there will be some unexpected costs that will arise around this building. The building condition assessment pegged a number of about $550,000, $560,000 on that cost. I think learning from the experience we had in Kemble, that figure is probably closer to $1.5 million over that 10-year period. And that's probably not going to be coming in nice, steady drip of 150 a year. We might look at nothing for the next 4 or 5 years, and then a new roof, which could be as much as $800,000, $900,000. So it could have some very significant expenses down the line, and we would be entering into that significant commitment with this proposal. The only other thing I'd flag from the report is this is a public building. It's owned by the township and it is a community facility. We haven't advertised its availability for private use at any point in time. We are responding to a singular proposal that has been made to council at this time and sharing it with council. We feel as staff talking about it, there are potential opportunities from this. There are also some downsides to this proposal, which is why the report in front of you today isn't coming with a recommendation. It really is coming for conversation in direction of council. With that, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions, but I thought that might just give a quick overview of where we're at.
Thank you for that. Now, questions? Oh, Mayor Carlton.
I'll start. And it's not that I'm against this, so I don't want anyone to take it that way. I just have a lot of questions and concerns. The age of it is coming up 60, not 50. We just added 10 years there. Right off the top, we've got an additional cost to get heating in there, so that's going to be a cost. We will also have the loss of the rental on with the Derby Pioneers, so where that's always been a wash, where we've given that back, we would now be going in the hole about $10,000 a year on that. I have a major concern with maintenance costs because we're looking at, and as you said, Mr. Loveloy, that the washrooms are beyond their useful life. I think if we start putting a lot of more traffic through there, we're going to be replacing all of those fixtures. And if we're replacing those fixtures, are we then looking at that septic bed and tank outside? So that's just a concern. I think there's a lot of further expenses that we could be taking on there that aren't offset by sufficient income to offset it. I would question, what does that community center currently cost us? Do we have any idea on what that facility has as an annual cost? And I see Sam looking that up right away, so I'll move on. One of the groups that supposedly would use it is lacrosse. I'm assuming we're talking the field lacrosse, not box lacrosse. Okay. Box lacrosse would go in on turf?
I'm President Owen Sam Minor Soccer, but yeah, Minor, we've talked to him because we're looking to get in a Domino and Sen at some point for many years. So yes, minor lacrosse, not just field lacrosse, box lacrosse would be willing to book time to do practices through the winter and stuff like that. Not majorly like field lacrosse, but box lacrosse would use it.
Okay, that's good to know because I would have thought they'd want to stay on the same floor surface. And what about one like carpet bowling? Are they going to go on turf, or they're still going to have to lay down those carpets or whatever on top of turf?
Yeah, so I might lean to the folks behind me slightly on this one, but I believe the carpet bowling would be able to be on that surface. It would require matting to be placed down for the process, but
it's okay. Anybody in the audience listening online can't hear unless we're going through the microphones.
All right. So the lawn bowling, they would need a finer turf than we would have. So we would have basically a line that we could roll out for them with their adequate lines, and as such they would.
Okay. And the only final comment I have is that recently, I think March 23rd, the city of Owen Sound has been looking at a facility as well. So I would be concerned we're getting into competition with them, and I'm wondering if a better avenue is for us to support them in theirs. So that's just my thoughts. Like I said, I'm not totally against it. I just have a lot of concerns for what it's going to cost the residents to have this happen out there. So I will finish. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sam.
So through your chair, in regards to Mayor Carlton's question about costs, this facility averages about $30,000 a year between heat, hydro, material supplies, insurance.
Any further questions? Councilor Winters.
I support the notion initially, right? I mean, I think it's a great thing. I think the community needs it. The area needs it. I don't think this is the first time that it's actually come to Georgian Bluffs. I think years ago it was originally talked about. I'm just a little skeptical on the timing and whatnot. I mean, my gut feeling is really it should be a new facility that's built for something like this. Is there opportunity now at some point in time as a temporary agreement, whether it's this facility or the Kemble Arena, and whether Georgian Bluffs should be looking at partnering with their neighbors and coming up with some sort of agreement on what a new facility looks like. A 10-year agreement on an old facility just doesn't sit well with me. And I do like your point being that the community really hasn't had the chance to tell us what they want to do with these facilities. So to box us into a corner at the moment, I'm a little uneasy with that. I'd love to see something temporary. I'd love to see carpet go in somewhere so that the kids had something to do immediately, right? Again, this has been talked about 5, 6, maybe even 10 years. I just think we need to look at some more options here before I consider just looking at one facility. But has the Kemble Arena ever been discussed, or is it an option?
So to you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Winters, no, Kemble hasn't been considered to the same degree. I think the slight challenge with Kemble is we now know there are some very significant, quite imminent costs that will be incurred at Kemble. It's in a less good condition than Derby is in terms of its structure and in terms of some of its fixtures and fittings. So there are more acute costs that were needed at Kemble just now. I would have, based on the information we have, I think Kemble, a 10-year agreement would be beyond reasonable for that facility at this point in time. So I think that's the first question. I think to the second question, in a fairly recent previous municipal experience, I was involved in the design and construction of a FIFA-sized indoor facility, artificial turf facility. It makes the numbers very, very scary, very, very quickly. We were getting close to 35 million for an indoor facility, and that was being built as part of a larger aquatic center and indoor facility with a total price tag of around about 100. And so there are some very significant costs associated with putting these things up as a built structure. I think the concept of a dome had been mentioned. Domes have a lower capital cost, but they certainly have a high operating cost. They're not cheap buildings to operate. And so the numbers in terms of a cost recovery on new built dedicated indoor turf facilities are quite challenging, to say the least. I will have to dig into the point that Mayor Carlton raised around Owen Sound. Considering it, I know they have considered them in the past. I'm not aware of the most recent conversations. So there could be some potential for partnerships for sure.
Councillor Day.
Thank you, Chair. It sounds amazing at first, and there's so much enthusiasm within the community, and I very much recognize the need within minor soccer and lacrosse, both box and field. I've talked to many people over the last 2 days about how beneficial it would be, how much less driving those parents would do. And after our biodigester meeting on Monday, I find myself a little bit wary of things that sound really great at first and wanting to take a little bit of time to make sure we're entering into an agreement that won't put us in a very difficult position years down the road. And also making sure we consult the Rec and Trails Master Plan. And Councillor Coburn sent me some stats about reminded me about our census and how if we look at the largest population groups within Georgian Bluffs in increments of 5 years, well, I'll just give you all 20 years, where approximately we go from 55 years old to 74 years old. So how would that demographic best, how would their recreational needs be met through this facility and all of our community centers? So, and as mentioned previously, I was really happy to hear the concept of review and just making sure we take the time to consult with all community members, including roller derby, who are feeling a little caught off guard. And they got a letter in at 4:55 this evening. So there is definitely another voice that we need to hear from as well.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I can make a couple of quick comments. So obviously, we have two existing user groups who are going to be impacted by this, both the Derby Pioneers and the Roller Derby. We reached out to them very early on, so there's been some conversation backwards and forwards between those groups over the last month or two on those issues. I think there is within our Rec and Trails Master Plan, it definitely does indicate the need for us to address our community needs. And that those community needs are unique in some ways to Georgian Bluffs. And so how do we move forward with that? I think proposals such as this aren't necessarily mutually exclusive of that consideration, but definitely are something that we would need to take into account and consideration for. It's how do we make sure that we tailor something like this to meet the needs of community here. I think would be something that we'd have to work with any potential vendor for this or any other proposal very closely on.
Thanks, Donald, for that. Any further questions? Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a kind of clarification. Sam, you mentioned about $30,000 per year cost for that facility. Would we still be carrying all of that $30,000 cost if we were entering into an agreement such as this?
The vast majority of those costs at this point, based on the conversations, and again, conversations we've had at the minute are very high level. So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, Mayor Carlton, the intention would be that the operational costs would be fully assumed by OSD. So that would be the liability insurance associated to the building. We would still obviously want to maintain our building insurance for that building, but the liability insurances associated to that building would be downloaded to the proponent. The operating expenses in terms of staffing would be downloaded to the proponent, and all the day-to-day operational costs, such as the hydro and water, the management of the septic system, would all be downloaded to the proponent. So we would see much of that 30,000. I don't think I've not done, and therefore I know it's not been done. I don't know how much of that 30,000 we would see, but it would be a significant proportion of that 30,000.
Thank you for that. Yep, come on up, Martin.
I was saying there, we also proposed a lease payment to the township as well for $5,000 per year, in addition to assuming they need daily utilities and the operational costs. So it's a little bit. I just thought I'd mention it on it.
Yeah, thanks. That's actually a question that I had. What was there a number negotiated or talked about as far as a lease agreement?
Yeah, just so that we're clear and I'm not overstepping my boundaries. No negotiation has as yet happened. We are presenting some information, and so the number that's been given is around 5,000. There'd obviously be some wrangling over that number as we go forward, if we go forward.
Thanks for that, Noel. Question that I did come up with was, or maybe directed to Martin or yourself there, Noel. Have you been in talks with anybody else in this area? Is there talk of another group coming to town to put AstroTurf in this area or this region, even if it's Port Elgin, or has there been conversations out there, or be kind of the one?
At the moment, no. I know Councillor Day had a long discussion with Jim McManaman this afternoon from Minor Soccer regarding that topic. We have expressively looked at building a turf field in Owen Sound, putting a dome over it. A part of this Owen Sound's master plan had that as a recommendation, but the city has no plans to move forward with it. This Blue Water Catholic School Board is looking at building a new St. High School. And part of that is a proposal to put in a turf field on the new facility, and at some point maybe put a dome over part of the field. As you know, things don't move very fastly in that type of world. So when they don't even have the property to build a school yet, how long would they get the permission before they get all the money to build the school, to get the property, and to put a turf field in? And on top of that, the first thing that would probably be cut from the budget probably would be the turf field. So at this thing, there are no plans moving forward towards having a turf field or dome around the city of Owen Sound.
That's right. Gonna look at my clerk for this here. I don't believe as council we're probably wanting to make a decision on this. We're wanting to take this for information. I'm sure we want to haggle it some more yet. Decide. My concern is for the group. They're probably wanting to get an answer one way or the other sooner than later. I'm sure they want to come up with something. So what should we do there on that, Kurt or Niall?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, there is a motion on the floor if council is comfortable with taking the vote on that motion.
Yep. Anybody like me to read the motion again? All right. Since I skipped it once already. All right. That council consider potential alternative uses for the Derby Community Centre by Ontario Sports Development, and that direction to staff on whether to continue to explore an agreement for use is given, and that staff are directed to further explore alternative uses, that staff be directed to bring a report and formal proposal back to council for further consideration. Mayor Carlton.
I think added on to that, I'd like to see some public consultation. Because while we are hearing very clearly from a lot of people who are fully supportive of it, we're not hearing that other side that are going to be impacted by it as well. So I think I'd like some public consultation added into that if we could, please.
Okay, can I get a mover? It's Mayor Carlton and Councillor Winters. Call the vote. All those in favor? It's carried. And back to the original motion. We already had a mover and a seconder, and I get to call the vote on that. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right, moving on. Infrastructures and buildings. INF 2023-05 Street Scan Road and Sidewalk Assessment recommendation reads that Street Logics is be authorized to complete a road surface scan for all hard surface roadways within the township and a sidewalk scan for all municipally maintained sidewalks in order to update the street scan data on our roadways and sidewalks, and the council approved waiving bylaw 2019-047 procurement of goods and service to allow for single sourcing of road surface and sidewalk scanning completion. Need to move her in a second. Councillor Day, Councillor Sholes, and I'm thinking Tim Lewis probably speak to this.
As the Deputy Mayor to the rest of the council. Yeah, this is just following up on what we had explained to council before, that we originally bought the programming, I want to say 2019, I could be wrong. And then for some reason it was not followed through on. We talked to them, got them to update it. It's going to help us again with our asset management plan, getting that up to speed, and help us moving forward with getting more accurate information, so that when we do tender something, we get an accurate tender, and there's no, I shouldn't say no, but hopefully less surprises.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions from council? Not seeing any questions from council. Thanks, Tim, for that. I will call. Oh, sorry, Councillor Day.
Processing there. So we're waiving the bylaw to just offer the contract to one company instead of looking at other possible companies who could do it for less cost. I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong. The AstroTurf has taken up a lot of my time over the last few days.
Turn it to Sam.
So through your chair, our purchasing policy or our goods and service policy, based on the estimated dollar amount, it would fall under the RFP process. As we already have the StreetLogic software, we're requesting that you waive that process to allow StreetLogic, which is a software we already have, to complete the scan and implement it into their software that we already use.
Which therefore would be cheaper because we already own the software.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Not seeing any further questions. I will call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Unfinished business. We have nil. New business. 11.1 land acknowledgement statement. Recommendation reads, sit tight, it's a long one. Whereas Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs has committed to being a part of the continued dialogue on truth and reconciliation, and whereas Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs adopt policy ADMIN 0321 land acknowledgement statement in July of 2021, and whereas Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs is committed to meaningful reflection and sharing of the land acknowledgement statement as part of the decision-making process. Now, therefore, it be resolved that council hereby commits to the following practices and direct staff to add the following provisions to policy admin 0221 land acknowledgement statement. Number 1, the land acknowledgement statement shall be read on the volunteer basis by members of council and staff with a personal reflection on the statement and its meaning of the work being undertaken by the township. Number 2, where there is no volunteer, reading of the land acknowledgement statement shall default to the meeting chair. Need to move her to second. Councillor Day, and Mayor Carlton. Discussion on this, Councillor Day.
It's my first motion. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background information about this one. The idea is not my own. The idea came from Toby Laux, who was my First Nations Métis and Inuit additional qualifications instructor for teaching and we were talking about in this class about how to have land acknowledgements at school, about how land acknowledgements can become very rote, and people stop listening to them. They sound the same every evening. And the words remain the same, which is important because these words have been composed with consultation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and Mi'kmaq, and I'm very well aware of that. Toby's suggestion for making more meaningful land acknowledgements where there was more active reflection was to use the original text of the land acknowledgement followed by the personal thoughts about what that means to each person speaking the land acknowledgement. And I have an example here if people would like to hear it. It is not for this region. It's from Toby Laux from Toronto. We acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and that part remained the same. What would be different every day on the announcements or every week would be something like Class 9B is grateful for the beauty and bounty of the Humber River, meaning leave the canoes and go back. They recognize their role in protecting this river so that generations to come can also enjoy its beauty. What I foresee working for us could be that we cycle through folks in going around the table, or perhaps at each meeting we choose the next person who will do the land acknowledgement so that nobody would have to do this unprepared. And that's all I had to say this evening. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. Any further comments? Mayor Carlton.
So I thank Councillor Day for bringing this forward because we recently had a situation where we were going to have a council meeting and a committee of the whole meeting in the same evening, and our traditional agenda would have us saying it twice, which to me trivialized what we were doing. To then waiver procedural bylaw to not say it at one of those meetings also then trivialized what we were doing. Why could we just waive it if it wasn't that important? So I think it's very important that we do say it. I think we want to be aware of saying it consciously and not just by rote, as was said. I'm also taking a course now on, it's called Healing Haunted Histories on Settler Colonialism. And one of the issues that was brought forward there is how some people, in response to this type of thing, try to give themselves a connection to our Indigenous peoples that doesn't really exist and try to exalt themselves over the whole issue. And it's a tricky situation to do it with respect, with the idea of healing both from our side and their side. So I thank you for bringing it forward, and I hope that we can find a way to move forward in a way that means it has meaning by everybody that's saying it. So thank you.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Day.
In case I wasn't clear as well, this motion is for everybody who would join us in a council meeting, staff and council included. And I would, of course, volunteer to go first if that would take some pressure off.
Thank you, Councillor Day, for that. Yeah, I think it's a great idea to put a difference, not a different spin, but a different person saying a different take on it every time. Because, you know, if you listen to me say it 10 times, you're not going to be listening to me the 11th time. So that may already be happening now after 6 meetings or whatever it's been. But I think that to change it up that way is a great change to have it go that way. The part that does concern me is the reflection piece there. It's a challenge for a lot of people to be able to come up with that thought process to make it fit. And as long as we can get some guidance from people like yourself to help us along the way there, I think we'll have no problem with it. But I just want to offer that, you know, it's a challenge for some people to do reflection on things like that. But I love the idea. I think it's great. That's really all I wanted to say. So a little bit of help from Councillor Day would be awesome.
And I don't think reflections should ever be mandatory. Students are allowed to pass in classes if they don't feel comfortable saying a reflection out loud. So if there's a counselor or staff person who would like to read the land acknowledgement and take the turn to say those words and feel it a little bit more deeply, but they're not feeling ready to make a personal reflection yet, then I'm happy to amend the motion if that's required, to leave it as an option to have a personal reflection at the end.
Perfect, thank you. Thoughts from council on the option? Would you rather have the option or leave it the way it is? I'm Mayor Carlton.
I would agree with having it as an option to make it reflect, because to say a personal reflection when it isn't really personal, it's something you read or picked up somewhere else. I think that part should be optional. So if we can change it to reflect that.
I'll go to our clerk.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, you do have this motion on the floor, so I would suggest that it be amended in the paragraph 1 under now therefore. So these were the revisions that staff are being directed to make. That point 1 be amended to read that the land acknowledgement statement shall be read on a volunteer basis by members of council and staff with a personal reflection on an optional basis, that the statement and its meaning for the work being undertaken by the township.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Day, Councillor Winters. All those in favor? That is carried. And to go to back to the original motion, I'll call the vote on the original motion. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I missed something there. Oh, no. Yeah. I should set you over here. All right.
May I formalize that I'll do the land acknowledgement next week to start us off?
Okay, perfect.
Oh, not next week. In June.
June, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Day, for that. Good motion to bring forward. 11.2 is the CAO job description. Comments from staff or from staff too. If you have anything, Crystal, there on this at all to.
I don't have
Oh,
anything
different.
right now. It's all kind of discussion right now between council.
Council, Mayor Carlton.
I would suggest at this point that we receive all of that for information to use, that if everybody can take the time to read everything, and we use that as we move forward with the process. So we just receive it for information at this point. I'm not sure there's much we can discuss about it at some point. And I'd like to see all of council here with both Councillor Thompson and Councillor Coburn. I think we want to take a look at all of that and maybe make some changes, but maybe not in a formal council setting. If we can find a way to have a meeting where that's all we focus on, I think would be a good idea.
Councillor Scholes, oh, sorry.
No. I just want to say thank you for stepping up for acting as a CAO for the time being, and as thanks to the staff for working through that process in the meantime. That meeting that we had over Zoom was, over Teams was quick, but I didn't get a chance to say thank you. So sincere thanks.
Perfect. Crystal.
I think our next steps is actually setting up kind of a timeline or a schedule for future meetings to only focus on CAO recruitment, because it has its own time frame that it's going to take up, and we will need certain specific meetings for that. So that I think should be on the next agenda as creating a timeline. Especially for meetings, because we are going into the summertime, it will be a lot more challenging with people's schedules.
All right, thanks. Any further comments?
Could I maybe suggest then we might take this, or staff can take this away as an action. We could based on past experience of recruitment processes and perhaps how others have gone through this with a council-led process, we could propose a schedule of special council meetings specifically to address this and bring back a recommended timeline. Perhaps add a couple of extra ones on there beyond what we think might be needed, just to provide that little bit of wiggle room. But staff could bring back a recommendation for a schedule of special council meetings to aid through that process, if that would be of value.
Well, that would be a value. Thanks for that, Mayor Carlton.
I have also been doing a lot of reading on this as well, so I have some other documents that I've been kind of going through and collecting that I would forward to have put on those agendas so that everybody have the same opportunity to do all this reading. So, thank you.
Any further comments? Not seeing any. Looking to the clerk here, do we have to do it? We don't have to do anything here with this? See if staff's taking it away as information that we provided. Welcome, acting CAO. Thank you. All right. Notice of motion. Does any member have notice of motion they wish to bring forward at this time? Not seeing anything. All right, closed session. But the Township of Georgian Bluffs moving to closed session at 6:24 p.m. in the council chambers with the acting clerk, HR manager remaining in the room to discuss 13.1 labor relations or employee negotiations, open meeting exemption D of section 239-2 of the Municipal Act 2001, acting CAO negotiations. Mover in a second. Mayor Carlton, Councillor Schuldice.
I just have a question for the clerk. We have 2 additional items. Are we adding them now to our closed session? So we actually need 2 more of that same thing.
Of 13.1?
Yeah,
So I gotta read it 2 more times?
we need, does it need to get read again, or do we just indicate that we have 3 issues there that all fit that same classification?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, to Mayor Carlton, I would suggest that the motion be put on the floor as is, and then it's an amendment to the motion if you wish to add 2 additional discussion items.
So we can amend that now. I need a mover and a second. Councillor Day.
Yes, sorry to interrupt there, Deputy Mayor Pringle.
All right.
In the first, you may need different staff present for each one of those items and different staff not present. So as it's been read at the minute, I believe the only people that are staying in the room would be the manager of human resources and the clerk. I think everybody else would be excluded. You may have different invite lists for each one of those 3 items.
Help me.
I think we would have Niall here for 2 of them and not for the 3rd one.
So I'll go to the clerk.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, as these are items that are being requested by the mayor, I would suggest that we state the general nature of those additional 2 items. So we're going under the same exemption, which is D. However, we have not disclosed the general nature of the 2 additional discussions.
So if I may, I without wishing to overstep my bounds as acting at this point, I think the first motion is around the acting CAO. I believe the second one would be around an interim CAO, and the third one would be a staffing matter.
That would be correct. Thank you.
All right. So do we need to amend the original motion to amend the first one with the labor relations or employee negotiations, open meeting exemption D of section 239-2 of the Municipal Act, acting CAO negotiations? That would be point 2. Go ahead, Carly. Oh, perfect.
Okay, through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. The amended motion would read that Committee of the Whole of the Township of Georgian Bluffs move into closed session at 6:27 p.m. in council chambers with the acting clerk, acting CAO/Director of Community Services, and HR manager remaining in the room to discuss 13.1 labor relations or employee negotiations, open meeting exemption D of section 239-2 of the Municipal Act 2001, acting CAO negotiations. 13.2 labor relations or employee negotiations, open meeting exemption D of section 239-2 of the Municipal Act, interim CAO discussions. 13.3 labor relations or employee negotiations, open meeting exemption D of section 239-2 of the Municipal Act 2001, staffing matter.
I will issue just one minor amendment to the clerk's fine work there. It's the first of those 3 items. I believe the acting CAO would be asked to leave the room for, so I will not be here for the first of those 3 items if council so wishes.
Thank you for that. Thank you for making that easy for me, Carly. I need a mover and a seconder to amend that. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Sholes, Councillor Winters, call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. We will go into closed session. Oh, sorry. Back to the original question. I need call the vote. I already had a mover and a seconder. To call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. We'll go into closed session. Oh. We are now back in open session. Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs went into closed session under open meeting exemption D of section 239-2 of the Municipal Act 2001. As a result of closed session discussions, 13.1 direction was provided to staff, 13.2 direction was provided to staff, and 13.3 no action was taken. On that, all right, the date of our next meeting is scheduled for June the 7th, 2023 at 5 p.m. If there is no further business, I'll call for an adjournment of this meeting. Mover and seconder, Council Winters, Councilor Shouldice. Any further discussions? I see none. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. We are now adjourned.